Women, have you heard? The Free Birthing in Color movement now has a private community space for all women to join. Within this private community, we have monthly village prenatals to celebrate and support the pregnant women moving towards their birthing time. There are monthly community calls to build deeper connection with one another. We have bi-monthly book clubs to gain deeper wisdom of our female bodies. There are guest speakers that will facilitate talks on all things women's health. We have space for mothers to share their in-power birth stories and so much more. You can join this community space for only $6 per month from now until December 21st of this year. I know that you've been seeking connection, support, guidance, knowledge, and newfound friendships. So now is the time to join us and find exactly what you're looking for. Even if you don't identify as a woman of color or an Indigenous woman, you're welcome to be here because we all need to be witnessed in the passages of life that we move through, no matter who we are or what we look like. This community will hold you whether you're pregnant or not pregnant, trying to conceive, don't want children at all, if you've had losses or abortions, if you're a birth or death worker of any kind, a grandmother, an auntie, or wise woman, there's space for you to be seen and share your wisdom to the collective well. Go to primalwomenportal.com/FBC community or check the show notes to become a member today. Jenna is on the show today, another first-time mother who made the choice to birth her baby free of the medical system and be supported by wise women in her journey. It took some time for Jenna to come into the acceptance that she would be a mother. Around the 4.5 to 5 month mark is really when it started to sink in. In this talk, she speaks to the intensity of emotions that she felt when she first got pregnant, being honest to the fact that the news of her pregnancy wasn't a joyful time for her, and how the emotions of fear and being upset is normal to feel at those times too. Once coming to terms with the pregnancy, Jenna left Costa Rica for the US and found a birth center in Texas to birth her baby, even though she felt like she was settling on her hopes to birth at home. Around the 7 month mark, Jenna found a traditional midwife in Costa Rica and made the choice to fly back to have her birth. Leading up to her birth, Jenna used affirmations and listened to positive birth stories as a way to feel settled in her birth space. She experienced a gradual pull into the early stages of her birthing process, choosing to have cervical checks within her birth as a way to bring more clarity into where she was during her birthing time. And Jenna was laughing at the point of emergence of her baby. And lastly, Jenna speaks to being labeled high risk just because of her weight, which is completely unnecessary. This is a very wholesome story to be heard. Jenna followed her heart and made the choice to birth in her power and was surrounded by a team of women who trusted her to do so. Hello, Jenna, and welcome to the Free Birthing in Color movement. I am very happy to have you here to share your story as a first-time mom who birthed in power. These are some of my favorite stories to hear. I find them so inspiring, so I'm really, really excited to hear all that you have to share today.
Yeah, thank you, Karma. I'm happy to share my story. And, when I was pregnant, I listened to a bunch of birthing stories, and that's what helped empower me in many ways. So
Mhm.
I want to, keep that going for other women who might find my story helpful for them too.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, and that's it. It's the stories, these stories matter. Hearing women birthing positively and in their power and, hearing that it is possible to have these really gentle, really beautiful birth experiences is so necessary, especially now because there's so many stories of trauma that we just hear and people just share out of nowhere to anyone that's pregnant. So yeah, I'm really grateful that you are willing to share this and to give that message to other women that they absolutely can do it, even if it is their first baby. Um, so before we get and dive deep into that story, I would love to ask you, what is your ancestry and lineage that you are passing on to your baby?
Yes. So is this from me, or does this include the father, or
It can
should
be
I?
both. Yeah, it can be both, but absolutely, yeah, for you for sure. But if
Yeah.
you want to include your father, or pardon, your the baby's father in there, you can definitely.
Well, I'm passing down a variety of lineage.
Mm,
I come from two different races. So my father's side of the family are Black, they're African, and also I believe some type of indigenous or Native American. My grandma always mentioned the Geechee tribe, which I could never find much information on, but
okay.
that is part of my lineage.
Okay.
Uh, I don't know where in Africa my ancestors come from. I never have really had access to that information either, but being that I am Black,
Mm,
obviously somewhere there.
hmm.
And then the other half of my lineage is European, German, primarily Irish,
Mm.
a pretty typical European
Yeah.
blend
Yeah.
of primarily German. So that's my lineage of my ancestors. And my child's father also comes from quite a variety of ancestors too. His Costa Rican,
Mm.
the indigenous folks of Costa Rica, um, Panamanian, and Jamaican. So
Oh,
a lot of
wow.
Caribbean, it's kind of the same concept where like everyone's Black, came from Africa to some extent
Hmm.
and came to the Caribbean,
Mm,
um, and kind of a mix of European as well as, Costa Rica was colonized by Spain. So
hmm.
similar, but not similar.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's what's been passed down to my son.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's always interesting to hear, what the mother side brings, what the father side brings, and especially now in the world we live in, there is such a big mix because of, the African diaspora has spread across the whole of the world pretty much and has been
Mhm.
placed in different countries. So yeah, it's interesting to hear, there's Panamanian in there, there's Costa Rican in there, there's Jamaican, there's yeah, all of these from all different places. So but I just love hearing that, and I think it's important to note and share this information as well as we share these stories of birth and everything. And it's nice to hold on to that ancestral lineage as well, because we are birthing in the way of our ancestors. So it's kind of like a nod to them, even though we stopped birthing in this way only a few generations back. It still is bringing in that energy as well. So thank you for sharing that, Jenna.
Yeah.
And then the second question, my favorite question I love asking mothers is, where did your motherhood journey begin?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this, and I really feel that it began um about halfway through my pregnancy, like maybe around 4.5, 5 months is when I felt it took me like, a solid 4.5, 5 months to just accept that I was pregnant. It wasn't something I was really planning, and it wasn't a total surprise, but it was kind of a surprise when I found out I was pregnant. So it
Hmm.
took me some time to accept this new identity and new role I was stepping into.
Mm,
And I would say around 4.5, 5 months of pregnancy, I saw myself beginning to shift into this new role, primarily by the choices I was making and the actions I started taking and changes I started making in my life.
And do you want to go into that a little bit, like what it was like maybe from when you did find out? Because you said it wasn't a surprise, but kind of, was. So in that journey of not really having the acceptance at that time that you were pregnant, like what was that kind of maybe bringing up for you? Or was there any specific things that you kind of had to work through so that when it did come to the space of the 4 or 5 months where you're like, okay, this is, what's happening and I'm ready to make these shifts, kind of, yeah, what was that journey for you? Like, I'm always curious.
It was pretty intense. It
Mm.
was like a roller coaster of emotions.
Hmm.
I never really thought that I would have kids.
Okay.
I didn't really see myself as being a mother, even though I kind of was in many ways to my friends. Um, yeah, I just sort of thought I was going to live this single traveler life, and
Mhm.
that was my life. And um, but I also somewhere in my mind had this idea that if I did get pregnant one day, that I would just figure it out. Like I would, like it wasn't, I suppose, there are many women out there that it's their mission or their goal to become a mother and they really want children.
Mm.
I never really had that same feeling. I just sort of thought if it happened, it happened.
Okay.
If I'm meant to be a mother, then I will get pregnant and it will happen. And if I'm not meant to be a mother, then I won't. Like my happiness wasn't dependent on being a mother.
Hmm.
Um, and so when I was pregnant, it was just the timing felt awful. Like I didn't
Mm.
have a job. My relationship with the child's father was not great and it's still pretty rocky.
Mm.
It wasn't ideal for me. I had no job, I had no money,
Hmm.
and I didn't really want to be like a single mom. I really only wanted to have kids if I knew that I had a supportive partner, and I knew
Mm.
that I didn't have that. So it was really hard for me to figure out how am I going to fulfill a role um so important and not regurgitate the same harm and same traumas that I lived through as a child. Because for me, I also I study a lot about trauma. I teach trauma informed yoga, and um, I I already know like everything that's happening, right? And I didn't want to be in a situation where I felt like I couldn't um, have a sense of stepping into that role and not reinventing what I already experienced.
Mm.
Um, And so it took some time to also accept that just because I'm not where I want to be in life doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to repeat the same trauma cycles that I lived through, that actually I could be the one to change it.
Mm.
But it took some time to get there. And being pregnant, there's so many hormonal responses happening too. Um, it it really I would say I didn't really feel like I got this and felt a sense of confidence in my
Mm.
pregnancy until much later.
Right.
um yeah, it hit me pretty hard, and but then I did finally get to a place where I felt happy and I
Yeah.
felt excited and I felt confidence, but I didn't feel all that in the beginning. And um I share this too because I think a lot of the time when women get pregnant, we just like they're so happy and they're so excited and like there's all this joy. And honestly, for me, there wasn't.
Hmm.
It wasn't joyful. I was really
Hmm.
upset and really sad and really scared.
Hmm.
And I think that that's also normal too. I think I'm not alone in that, and that a lot of women feel that way too.
Yeah.
We don't always see it. So
Hmm.
that's that, yeah. So once I got through a lot of that, then I started to accept and find joy, and it just took some time.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that because it is another side of pregnancy that women don't talk about because it is this cultural narrative that when you're pregnant, you have to be so grateful and joyful and happy and all of the things. And yeah, like you're saying, it can be really scary and it can bring up a lot of stuff immediately because, it's a big thing that happens to you, and it can be very life-changing, for in a multitude of different ways. And yeah, that can be really scary, and that can also, I've heard women say that it like they found out they were pregnant and it just crashed their whole world down and they didn't enjoy those first couple of months. And so it's really nice that you can share that and be open and honest with that, because I'm sure there are many other women that connect on that line, but are too afraid to kind of speak it out and speak up about it because it's, well, you're pregnant. You should just be happy about it. You're pregnant. You're bringing life into this world. Like, why aren't you grateful for this beautiful miracle? And it's like, well, there's also a whole bunch of other stuff that is going on, in your life. Like you're saying, it wasn't that perfect situation where you had the supports of that partner and you didn't have a job. Like there's all these factors that can make that experience of knowing you're pregnant really terrifying. So yeah, I'm really grateful that you were able to bring that into this space, because that's just the truth of it. That's just the truth of the journey that some women have to go through. Um, and yeah, it's beautiful that you did find a way through and you found happiness. Oh, and there's your little one. Aw.
Yeah, he's hungry.
Yeah, yeah, no worries. Feed him.
I'm just
Feed
gonna
him.
go off camera for a moment.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. In this, when you did find out that you were pregnant, what was, as we spoke about kind of the emotional aspects of that, but what was the journey for you then going into like your pregnancy care? Did you choose a provider? Did you know kind of how you wanted to be, um, how you wanted to have those interactions, or was it just something that you weren't sure what you wanted to do, who you wanted to see when you were going through that part of the pregnancy journey?
Yes, that was another journey too. I knew what I wanted
Mm-hmm.
and I knew what kind of provider I wanted. I just didn't know where I wanted to do it.
Okay.
Uh, I knew I'm also a doula, a birth doula,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew from the beginning that I wanted to have a midwife and I wanted to have a natural birth,
Mm-hmm.
specifically a birth in water.
Okay.
And it took me some time to decide where I wanted to give birth. I was in Costa Rica when I got pregnant, and because I was not having the greatest time with my child's father, I left and went to the US. And I stayed with my sister for a little bit, and it took me some time to decide if I wanted to give birth in the US or in Costa Rica.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided I was going to give birth in the US, and I found a
Okay.
midwife and I
Yeah.
found a birthing center in Texas,
Mm-hmm.
and I started my care with with her.
Mm-hmm.
And it took some time to find a provider too. Some of the midwives were like afraid to work with me because of my weight and because of how far along I was when I was seeking care. I got turned down a lot.
Okay.
So
How far along were you when you started looking for this care?
I was like 17 or 18 weeks.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's not even that far along, to be honest.
It's it's really not, but that's the feedback that I got.
Okay.
So that I was too far along to start a practice. So
Mm-hmm.
but everything worked out the way it was supposed to,
Mm-hmm.
because the providers that were turning me down were providers that work out of hospitals. And I
Okay.
didn't want to give birth in a hospital. So I found the right team of midwives. I had a great birthing center, one of like the only freestanding birthing centers in Texas that accepts insurance, that
Mm.
works with color. So
Mm-hmm.
it was really an ideal place. Um, but then further along, I little man's growling. I don't know if you can hear that.
I can
Further
hear a little bit. Yeah. It's
along,
cute.
I also sat with myself and I really wanted to give birth at home.
Mm.
And giving birth in Texas at a birthing center felt like I was settling.
Okay.
And I really wanted to give birth in Costa Rica. So I got everything together and I found I think it was around maybe 7 months pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
I found I found a midwife in Costa Rica.
Okay.
And before that, I was having not a hard time, but I hadn't met a midwife I really felt connected to.
Mm.
So that also influenced, like, okay, I'll just stay in the US. But then I reached out to a midwife and she sent me another midwife, and I found someone that I really connected to.
Mm.
Yeah, I think I was about 7 months pregnant, maybe
Okay.
6 months.
Yeah.
And I felt really connected to her, and I changed my mind, and I was like, no, I'm gonna go to Costa Rica.
Mm.
And I just after one conversation with her, really,
Yeah.
I was like, no, I need to this is the person that I need to support me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I don't know if I answered your question, but I really just found her through word of mouth.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, no, that answers my question. Because it's like you were saying, it's a journey. You first started out with trying to find care and seek care within the medical system, and it just, you weren't driving with how you were kind of being treated. It wasn't exactly what you wanted. So you followed, to me, it sounds like you followed your heart and you followed your intuition. And then, everything worked out really beautifully for you to find this woman in Costa Rica where you were that perfect match. Um, and yeah, it seems like that was in alignment in the time when you started to accept your pregnancy. So it was just like, to me, how I see it, and I'm imagining in my head is like everything was just beginning to fall into place for you, for you to create the birth that you wanted to have with yourself and your son. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it was all like a really hard decision to make.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly went back and forth so many times.
Mm.
Like I was like, no, I'll go to Costa Rica. No, I'll stay in the US. No, I'll or so many times. I it I like drove myself crazy a little bit trying to vision, and my brain was like, stay in the US, it's more practical. You have your family here, your
Mm.
health insurance covers things here.
Yeah.
But my heart was like, no, I want to be at home in Costa Rica. Like I want to have the jungle. And
Yeah.
my baby's Costa Rican, and I wanted the process of giving him dual citizenship was, in my
Mm.
opinion, a little bit easier
Yeah.
if I gave birth to him in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I listened to my heart and
Mm-hmm.
my intuition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. So then when you got back to Costa Rica and you were meeting with this midwife that you had found, so she's a traditional midwife. That is she a Costa Rican woman or somebody that just lives in Costa Rica but practices in the traditional sense?
You could say she's Costa Rican.
Okay.
She's actually from Cuba and came to Costa Rica as a baby.
Okay. Yeah.
She's lived
Okay.
in Costa Rica her whole life. So,
Mm-hmm. Wow.
and yeah,
Okay.
she is a traditional midwife.
So then when you started working with her, like what was that like? Because you said you had spoken with her once and just kind of knew that she was the woman for you to witness your birth. So then when you actually got in person, what was that pregnancy experience like when you met her and started working with her and started to prepare for your actual birth?
Well, the first month or so I knew her, we only worked online, like virtually.
Mm.
And I actually didn't meet her in person until I got to my birth house. I was like
Oh.
37, 38 weeks pregnant.
Mm.
Um, and when I finally met her in person, it gave me like I knew I had made the right choice
Mm-hmm.
because the level of care I received from her was so much more.
Mm.
It was so much more than the level of care I was receiving from my midwives in the US.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, I mean, our first appointment was like an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, should I set the baby down? He's nursing, he's like singing and
That's okay. No, no, it's okay. I can still hear you talking fine. Yeah, it's all right.
okay, okay. So I knew I had made the right choice. The level of care I received was It was so much more personal.
Mm,
And we didn't like do all the medical stuff. She really took the time to check in with me emotionally.
mm,
And that's ultimately what I needed.
yeah.
I believe that for many women, birth does not need to be a medical event.
Mm-hmm.
For some women, it might be, depending on their health. But for the majority of women, no. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt for myself that I didn't need all of this. Like, like it was sort of like, how many times do I need to pee in the cup? And
Yeah.
like check all there are some important things to check, but we really focused on my emotional health. And that's what I needed to give birth was I really needed emotional support. And
Yeah.
my midwife, she really took the initiative to do that for me.
Mm, beautiful. Wow. Yeah, and you're so right. Like the emotional aspect is so important, and it's just not even talked about or mentioned when working with providers in the medical system. It is all just like, you need to pee in a cup, we need to check your blood, we need to do your blood pressure, and then that's it. But there's so much more that comes with it in the pregnancy journey for women. They need that emotional support, they need that spiritual support, they need the mental support and the physical support. And they don't often get that at all within the medical system. But I hear all of the time when women, transfer themselves out of the medical care and into the more traditional style care with the traditional midwife or the birth keeper or the doula or just having a friend, it's like night and day in the way that they're treated and in the way that they really feel like they're being heard and listened to, and like their words matter going through that part of their birth or part of their pregnancy experience. And that's how it should be. Women and that are about to become mothers really need to have that feeling of being held throughout the pregnancy time so that they can have that same feeling within their birthing time as well.
Yeah, I I agree.
Mm.
My and it's funny you say like being held because my midwife like literally held me when I was in labor.
Oh, hi, buddy. Hi, cutie. Aw. Then did you want to speak to like what it was like for you those last couple of weeks nearing your before your birth started, and like what that experience was like for you, maybe getting into your birth journey?
Yeah. See, my due date was November 20th. And on November 1st, I left the Caribbean side of Costa Rica and I traveled to San Jose. And I had rented a house on a like a little retreat center. It's called the yoga farm, I
Mm,
think is what they call it. And I moved into my birth house and I started to get settled there. I had a friend with me for the first like 2 weeks I was there. Um, I got there really early because well, time makes me anxious
okay.
and I wanted to be there early and I wanted to settle so that
Mm,
I knew that would help me feel more calm. And
mm-hmm,
um, I was also working like a 9 to 5 job that was really like low key and not stressful. And I just like, got up every day and worked and hung out with my friend and went for walks and swam in the pool
mm,
and farmers market and just did things that I normally would do. And I made little trips to the store and like gathered supplies that I need for birth. And I just got settled into my birth house. And like a week leading up to the birth, I was alone and my friend had to leave and um I was alone and but I also was in community. Like there were people on the property on the farm, and I had friends come visit me. And the last like week leading up to the birth, I definitely emotionally like what some things I started doing to prepare was I started writing in my journal like affirmations and affirmations about what I wanted for my birthing experience and affirmations to help me feel powerful and strong. And this really helped get my mind in the right place. And I continued to listen to birth stories, positive birth stories. And, leading up to the birth, like I knew it was time. I very much felt like he's coming soon. I was annoyed by everything. And I just sort of I felt it like he's coming any
Yeah.
day now. Be here. So I did my best to just keep myself grounded.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Dear.
Oh, that sounds beautiful. And I love that, you took the time to really get settled into your space and make sure that it was exactly what you needed so that you weren't, too stressed out or had too much anxiety showing up, maybe 5 days before your baby came. You actually took that good couple of weeks to really get in settled, like you're saying, settled into the birth house, settled into the space so that everything just ran smoothly. That sounds so beautiful and so dreamy.
Yeah, there were, it was really beautiful and dreamy and um I'm like trying to remember back to it all. Like I was sad when my friend had to leave. That was
Mhm.
kind of an unexpected part of the plan.
Okay.
I was sad for like a few days,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
other than that, like being there was really it was really beautiful.
Hi. Aw. And did you want to, because you were just saying how you could start feeling like you're ready for him to come. So do you want to start getting into that whole beginning of that birth story and what that was like?
Yeah. I yeah, I just I felt very my mom would always tell me like you'll know when it's time because you will be so tired of being pregnant. Like you just
Mm.
won't be able to tolerate it
Mm-hmm.
anymore. And I was getting to a point where I was really over being pregnant. I was
Yeah.
having a hard time sleeping. I remember there was a day where, like, on the farm where I was staying, like, they were painting the neighbor's deck. And, like, the smell of the paint fumes, like,
Mm.
made me furious. And
Okay.
it actually was crying. Like, I hated the fumes and the smell. It made me cry. And I had left my house and I went down to the pool and then I got down to the pool and someone was smoking a cigarette and I was like I
Yeah.
was like I can't like I just couldn't like the smell of the cigarette smoke and the smell of the paint I was crying and really upset.
Mm.
I sort of was like, all right, that's maybe not like a normal reaction
Mm.
to those scents. So I knew I was nearing my end and
Mm.
I let's see, my last day of work was a Thursday,
Mm.
and that was such a so kind of timeline, like, the baby wound up coming on Monday. So
Okay.
the Thursday before he came, that was my last day of work. And then that Friday, I was so happy I had the day off of work. I had a burst of energy and I went to Pequeño Mundo. I don't know,
Mm.
have you been to Pequeño Mundo?
No.
Well, for those of you that don't know what Pequeño Mundo is, it's kind of like Walmart, but not Walmart, and
Okay.
everything's cheap, and the store's really big, and there's just a lot of stuff there. And I had never been. I was excited to go. I needed to get more supplies for birth. So I put on my sneakers, got an Uber, and I went to Pequeño Mundo. And I went down every single aisle. I got like stuff to make my house look cute. I got, supplies for birth and just had a whole Pequeño Mundo experience.
Yeah.
And I'm like super pregnant, like fully pregnant. And by the end, I was like, okay, I need to get out of here. My feet hurt so bad. They're so swollen. I left Pequeño Mundo with a full cart of stuff and got back to my birth house. And I had noticed like a lot of fluid in my underwear, and I
Mm,
was maybe feeling a little anxious about that, if that was like a normal amount of fluid or was it amniotic fluid? Like, should I have this much fluid coming out of me? And, it
mm-hmm.
was clear. It kind of had like a pinkish, reddish, brownish tint. And I was like, oh, I must be like starting to lose my mucus plug. Like it
Mm,
must be kind of starting to go. And, I'm like I said, I'm a doula. So I have like my books and I'm like
mm.
double checking all my books and like, okay, I'm in this stage. And I'm like kind of being way too technical about it all. I call my midwife and we do like an amniotic fluid test to make sure I'm not leaking fluid. And I wasn't. It was just my body,
Mm,
getting ready for birth. And so that was Friday. And then Saturday, I woke up and I was exhausted. Like the
mm.
Pequeño Mundo trip knocked me out. I
Mm,
had this feeling on Saturday that was like, I don't want to leave the house. I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to do anything. I, made a grocery order and I got food delivered and I was like, I need to get food here. Like I think the baby's coming soon. Like I just
mm,
felt very much like get everything ready, get
mm.
everything in place, have food, have all the things you need for birth.
Yeah.
So Saturday I hung out and chilled and it was a rainy day and I started feeling cramps too, like
Mm,
period like cramps. I think maybe those started Friday. I don't remember exactly. It might have
mm.
started Friday or even Thursday. I think even Thursday I remember like texting my coworker that I had some cramps. So
Okay.
actually I had very light cramps for a few days.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it was Saturday the cramps got a little more
Mm.
intense, but still nothing beyond like a period pain cramp.
Yeah.
And then Sunday, my midwife came over and, examined me. And by examine, I mean like checked my blood pressure and measured my belly and felt my belly.
Mm-hmm.
And, we hung out for a little bit. This was Sunday, right? Yes.
Yeah.
And she was like, all right, let's go on a walk. Like, let's start to she's like, I think you be in like an early pre-labor. Let's get this moving. And I was like,
Mm.
I'm all for that. We went on a little hike,
Mm-hmm.
up a really steep hill. It was really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It
I'm
was
sure.
really hard. And I had been walking that hill throughout my time there. Like I would walk it a couple times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really hard. And she had me go like up the hill. We walked into town. We did a whole like, couple miles at least.
Mm-hmm.
And I I got home and I was tired and I rested.
Mm-hmm.
And after that walk, my cramp like feelings, they got more intense
Mm-hmm.
and more consistent. Like they were
Mm.
starting to form a pattern. And I was like,
Okay.
all right, this is it.
Mm.
But it wasn't it just yet. And I had plans to go meet my friend for lunch. We were gonna go have Indian food. So I got in an Uber. And when I got in that Uber, it didn't feel great to ride in a car. Like
Yeah.
it just wasn't comfortable, and my cramps, when that point, we can just call them contractions because that's what they were.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they were steady, they were consistent, and they were manageable. Like I could talk through them. I didn't need to like, stop what I was doing, but
Yeah.
I felt them.
Yeah.
And I go have lunch with my friend and we sit down, and well, then they started getting more intense and I actually did need to stop talking.
Mm-hmm.
My friend was like, "You're totally in labor right now." And she like also knows a ton about birth, has had home births, and
Okay.
studied to be a doula as well. And she's like, "You're totally in labor right now." And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah, I guess I am. I am." She's like, "Oh my God, I'm so excited." And we had our lunch. I had Indian food. It was so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew on the ride over there, I was like, this is my last time leaving the house. I
Yeah.
knew that. I felt that like you're not leaving the house for a while. I get home from lunch and I rest, I put stuff away, go about my day. And then I guess like around evening, maybe just before sunset, my contractions started getting more intense and more
Mm-hmm.
regular. And at that point, I started timing them on an app
Okay.
just to have an idea of what was going on. And I tried to sleep, I tried to rest. I kind of got to this where I was like, I rested for a while and I maybe slept 15 minutes and woke up and slept 15. I don't really remember. Like, have you ever taken a nap and woken up and been like, was I asleep? Or
Mm-hmm.
was I awake? Like you're kind of in this delirious.
Yeah.
I was there and
Okay.
I called my midwife and I said, things are getting more intense and I just want to make sure you're ready. I was like, I think I'm gonna need to call you like in the middle of the night. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna need some support. It's starting
Mm-hmm.
to get to that point. And
Can
she
I
was like,
quickly just ask you, at the birth house, because you said you had a friend that was staying with you, and were they
"Mm,
meant to stay with you for your birth experience as well, but then they had to leave, so you were by yourself other than your midwife, or did you have another person that was in the birth house with you in this time?
oh, I lost you for a moment."
Oh, did you hear the question, or do you want me to repeat it?
I think I heard part of it and I think I can answer it.
Mm,
My friend, yeah, she was supposed to be part of my birthing experience.
okay.
But
Okay.
something really urgent had come up and
Right. Okay.
at least I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then you were going through this early birthing stages then by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I was
Okay.
alone. Yeah,
Wow. Okay.
I was alone and my midwife was like in and out, like
Yeah.
yeah. And
Okay.
yeah, so I told her I think I'm gonna need you in the middle of the night. Just
Mm,
be ready. And I did. I called her around midnight and I was like, I think you need to bring over the birthing pool.
okay.
And she did. She came over, she brought the birthing pool, she
Mm,
rearranged my bedroom, she blew up the pool. She had all of her supplies and things got I remember like feeling this feeling in my chest, like he's coming, like it's getting
mm-hmm.
very real.
Mm,
Like for some reason, setting up the pool and like
yeah.
it just felt like okay, like it's we're like the show is starting. And
Mm-hmm.
she hung out with me for a few hours, and I had to start really breathing through my contractions at that point,
Yeah.
and then I got to a point where I was okay, and we decided that we would do a cervical check to see where I'm at because at that point it was Sunday and I had been kind of crampy since, Thursday, Friday.
Mm,
We did a cervical check and I was 1 centimeter.
mm,
I was like, oh boy, that's, don't get too excited yet. We're only 1 centimeter. My midwife left. I got some sleep. And then Monday morning, we woke up and we did the same thing again. She came over to my house. We went on the same intense hike. We went into town. We got pipas, we got fruit, we got everything ready for birth. So I'm like dilating in labor, going on this hike with my midwife. then we get back to my house and, we hang out. And I don't really remember what we did. I just kind of went about my day, and she was there with me. And I think she started making chicken soup so that I could
Mm.
have that for my labor and when the baby came. And
Mhm.
I think she just started like preparing food and like
Yeah.
getting stuff set up. And I just like, I don't know what I did. I do remember on Monday after the hike, I felt this like surge of energy, and I decided to walk down the hill and go get in the large like swimming pool they had, and the water was cold, and I got
Mhm.
in and I immediately got out. I was like, "Oh, awful idea." It was so hot, like from
Yeah.
that hike. I was so sweaty and hot. I just wanted to cool off, and that was not a good idea. And then walking back up to my house, I had to like hold on to the railing and like had a contraction, and I was like, oh God. And and yeah, I think at some point my midwife came back over, and she came over, and then her assistant came over, and then things started getting more intense, and I really started getting into the thick of it. I I just spent a lot of my labor on my hands and knees, like leaning over a birthing ball.
Mm.
I spent a lot of time sitting on the birthing ball in the shower and just letting the hot water run on me. Um, I I found my labor to be pretty manageable. Like I could breathe through it, and I could do movements and move my body and really work through what I was, work through those waves. But then once my water broke is when things got really intense.
Mhm.
I think it was around like 8 p.m. My midwife had left. She's like, I'm going to take a break and go home and get some dinner, and I'll come back in like an hour or two. My assistant is here with you. She's, and she was great. And she's like, don't worry, I'll be right back. And when my midwife left, I went to the bathroom, and after I peed, I heard a big goop.
Mm.
Water broke in the toilet, which was super convenient.
Yeah.
Um, and I told the assistant that my water broke, and she immediately called the midwife. And I don't really know time. Things get really blurry after the water broke.
Mhm.
I guess I'll also backtrack and say, like, before my water broke, I got in the birthing pool. I was feeling kind of tired, and
Mm.
my midwife had suggested I get in the birthing pool just to have some some relief, a little bit of a
Mhm.
relaxant. And when I first got in the birthing pool, I didn't like it. Like
Mm.
I couldn't get comfortable. I didn't really enjoy it. Sorry, just a moment.
Mhm.
Okay, just a little guy.
No
Um,
worries.
I was not comfortable the first time I got in the birthing pool. I didn't last really more than 15 minutes.
Okay.
Got out of the birthing pool, and then that's when I went to the bathroom and my water broke.
Okay.
And so my midwife comes back, and yeah, I continued to labor. After my water broke, we did a cervical check, and I think I was 4 centimeters. Um, and I forget another important detail. It must have been sometime on Monday we did a cervical check, and it must have been in the morning, and I was 1 centimeter. And I remember feeling like really discouraged because we had done the cervical check Sunday night, and I was 1 centimeter.
Mhm.
And then like 10 hours later we did it, and I was like one, maybe 2 centimeters. And I remember feeling a little discouraged. And I remember my midwife was like, hey, like, things can progress really quickly once you hit like, 4, 6 centimeters. So she's
Mhm.
like, we're gonna keep, she's like, you got this, we're gonna keep going through this. And we did one position on the bed where I like laid on my back, and I put like the back of my pelvis on the edge of my bed.
Mhm.
And I did that during a contraction, and it
Mhm.
actually did work. It helped the baby move further down into my pelvis.
Okay. I'm just curious, for the cervical checks, were they things that you had asked to be checked, or was it your midwife was asking to do them for you?
Yeah, that is a good question. I had told her that I didn't want to do them. I was like, I don't want cervical checks. And then we sat down and talked about it. And she's like, why don't you want them? Are you scared of them? Do you not want to know? Like, what's behind that? And I was like, I'm afraid it's gonna hurt, like
Mm,
I heard how horrible they are. And I was like, I also like am worried I'll get anxious if I know where I'm at, and we talked about it. And then I was like, well, it would be kind of nice to know where I am and have an
mm,
idea of where I'm at in my labor, like how much energy I need to think about conserving. And she gave me my word that she would be really gentle and that cervical checks didn't have to hurt. That
mm,
for many women, they do hurt, but they don't have to hurt.
right.
And when she did it, she went really slow. She talked to me through everything and it didn't hurt.
Mm,
Like it didn't hurt at all. And I felt safe and supported by it.
right.
It was kind of like one of those moments where it's like, it's not what I initially wanted, but in the end, it was helpful. And
Mm,
the reasons behind not wanting it were based on other factors that didn't really apply to my midwife.
right. 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 Yeah.
If
Because
I
I,
know,
oh,
yeah,
sorry. Go ahead.
I just hadn't really heard any stories of them like not hurting,
Right.
so I
Hmm.
was scared, but
Right.
it didn't hurt. It's a little uncomfortable, right? But
Hmm.
it was not pain.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah. I only
Yeah.
asked because, generally, for the most part, for the traditional midwives that I know, they don't do them unless they are instigated by like the mother saying, like, I really want them. So that's why I just wanted to get that clarification of like if she was asking or saying like we're going to do a cervical check, then in my mind I'm like, oh, but that's not what a traditional midwife does, so maybe she does like have licensure but she's working outside of it or something. But if it was like instigated by you, which is obviously your choice, and you're still holding the power in that situation, I think that's really beautiful that you're were able to have that conversation with her and then get to a place where you felt comfortable having that done, and it was a way that like you said, was able to give you that mental note of where you were at in your birth process, and that felt really good for you.
Yeah, yeah. It was definitely a decision we made together, and it was really the initiation of it being done was that I had been in labor for about 2 days. So, we wanted to really get an idea of where I was at. So so yeah, like once my water broke, I was 4 centimeters, things really took off, and I needed a lot of support from my midwife. She pretty much was like my doula, and she held me and helped me walk and let me hold on her when I had contractions. I moved positions a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and right around the time, that I started to transition, a little bit before, I was so tired. Like I just remember feeling exhausted. And I was like, can I please get in the bed? I really want to lay down. Can you help me get in the bed? And my midwife was like, you can, but you've expressed to me that you don't, the bed is uncomfortable. I had expressed that earlier in my labor that the bed felt uncomfortable. I
Mm-hmm.
needed to move. And she's like, we can do it, but you've mentioned it didn't feel that great. I'm not sure if you're gonna like it. And I was like, I'm tired. I need to get in the bed. So we got in the bed, and sure enough, I hated it. I hated it. It was horrible. Like my contractions felt more painful laying in a bed. And I remember thinking, like, how do women labor in bed?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my God. Like if I had to have my whole labor in a bed, like it would be awful. It would be horrible. So that didn't last long. I got out of the bed after like a round of contractions, and that actually had caused my baby's heart rate to drop, which I did not know at the time, but I learned later that that had happened. And we got it back up. I got out of bed, I started walking, and then I started feeling the urge to push. So I got in the pool, I started pushing, and we did another cervical check, and I was only 6 centimeters, which is a little early to be pushing. Um, So I got out of the pool and continued to move. And um, then I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I can't. Like I cannot do this anymore. I don't like I can't go on any longer. And we did one more cervical check and I was 9 centimeters.
Mm.
And my midwife was like, "You're 9 centimeters. Like, do you want to go to the hospital?" And I was like, I like thought about it in my like delirious state of being in labor. And it was like, no, I'm 9 centimeters. Why would I do that? I was just transitioning. I
Mm-hmm.
was just the transition part of labor. And I got back in the birthing pool and I pushed for about 30 minutes.
Wait, so sorry, I'm just um she offered to go to the hospital, so does she have hospital privileges then, or would she have just sent you by yourself to the hospital?
No, she does not have hospital privileges. We had talked about this as a backup plan. She would just go to the hospital with me and just tell them that she's
You're
my
her
friend.
friend. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
Fair enough.
she was just gonna lie and be my doula and just be with me. And she
Fair.
wasn't um gonna leave me. And
Right.
that
Okay.
was actually like, big pause in the story. I'm glad you asked that question. That was another reason why I chose to work with her.
Mm-hmm.
Because some midwives in Costa Rica, if you have to get transferred to the hospital, they can't go with you. And they
Yeah.
they won't go with you because it's too risky for them or they have their reasons. But
Mm-hmm.
my midwife was like, no, I go with you.
Mm.
I go with you. Like no one has to know I'm a midwife.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm your friend. I'm your doula.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was like another like I didn't want to be in anyway, like that situation didn't happen,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. I was
yeah.
just
Yeah.
curious. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
No, that's great because I've heard that too, where women transfers and then she's just by herself in the hospital, and it's just like so sad that that
Yeah.
situation happens because the midwife wants to protect themselves, and then so I'm glad that that didn't happen and you were able to stay home and birth your baby. Sorry
Yeah.
for interrupting.
No, it's okay. That's a good question. But I guess yeah, I got back in the birthing pool. Yeah, I grunted and moaned and let out a lot of sounds that I did not even know I could make. Yeah, I was on my knees leaning over the edge of the pool and um actually at that point when I started pushing, my midwife like had her fingers on my perineum by request because it helped guide me where to push. And I had remember hearing other women talk about this and that it helped them. And she did it at one point, and I felt like it was really helping me. Like I felt like it gave me guidance on like kind of where to push. And she was like, he's starting to crown. And I reached down and I could feel his head. And
Oh.
I was like, oh my God, I can feel his head. Like I said
Mm,
that. And I was on my knees, and at that point I like kept my left knee down and then I stepped my right foot down. So I was
mm,
kind of like a lunge, sort of
mm,
like a squat lunge. And after I did that, he just flew out of me. Like it was a matter of like, oh my God, I can feel his head. I moved my foot and then boom, like
mm.
he full ejection response, like crown body. Like there was no
Mm,
like shoulders. No, it was literally he crowned and he flew out of me.
mm.
And my midwife and I both like started laughing because
Aw.
so not shocked that a baby came out, but shocked that he came out in that moment, right? So fast. And yeah, we started laughing. And he I kept him in the water for like a minute. And then I pulled him up and brought him to my
Mm.
chest. And within a few seconds, he started crying and
Aw.
he opened his eyes and he looked right at me. And
Aw.
yeah, it was like the biggest relief ever. I mean,
Mm,
it really got intense. And I think back to the timeline of my labor, like my water broke
mhm,
around like 8:15 p.m.
mhm.
and the baby was born at 11:49 p.m. So that was
Wow.
only like I had gone from 4 centimeters to 10 centimeters in just a few hours.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Jasir was the due date was November 21st, and he came at 11:49. So he was 11 minutes before his due date. And I just thought that was so like it was funny because I'm like in the birthing pool pushing, and I was like, how much longer? And my joke, she's like, he's waiting for his due date. Like she's like 20 more minutes till it's the 21st. Like he must be waiting for his due date. And he came a
Mm.
little bit early.
Oh.
And yeah, I got in the bed and I held the baby and I birthed my placenta,
Mm.
which was also like such a funny experience, like
Yeah.
getting in the bed, and I was like, okay, how do I birth the placenta? And sorry, I just need to go off camera for a moment.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, how do I birth the placenta? And she's like, just push. I like pushed and it just came right out. Like
Oh.
no issues. No issues at all.
Mm-hmm.
I did have a pretty deep tear, but
Okay. Mm-hmm.
um like yeah, I had a pretty big tear, and that's because he came out so fast.
Mm-hmm. Did you do anything to remedy the tear, or did you just let it heal naturally?
I let it heal naturally.
Mm.
My midwife gave me postpartum care for about 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
She came over every day and checked on it.
Mm.
We used a variety of like herbal remedies,
Mm.
sitz baths, and yeah, I let it heal naturally. It was bad
Mm.
enough that I could have used stitches.
Okay.
And my midwife offered to give me stitches, and
Mm-hmm.
she's like, you also don't need them if you want to heal naturally. She's like, it's your choice.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't want stitches on around my perineum.
Yeah, totally.
So we chose not to do them, and yeah, and I things are healed.
Yeah.
Things are not like what they used to be,
Mm-hmm.
but they're healed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. And then what did you do with the placenta? Did you cut the cord, or did you have a lotus birth, or did you burn the cord off? What did you do with that?
Let's see. We kept it. I don't think it was a full lotus birth. We put it in a bowl and we kept the baby attached for an hour or two.
Mm-hmm.
And um and then I cut the cord,
Okay.
and my midwife's assistant immediately made me a placenta smoothie.
Okay. Yeah.
And I had a placenta smoothie.
Yeah.
Uh, And I also will add, like, throughout my labor, like, I was eating and drinking, like, I was being fed a lot of things, but I
Mm-hmm.
ate, drank so much food during my labor, like pineapple juice and peepa juice and chicken soup and like
Mm-hmm.
other like herbal concoctions that my midwife have that I don't even remember what they were, but I was consuming a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then I froze my placenta and I had placenta smoothies. And I later when I got back to the Caribbean side of in Puerto Viejo, I planted my placenta and
Oh.
put a rambutan tree over.
Oh.
So
Oh.
it's gonna feed a fruit tree.
That's beautiful. I love that. That's so lovely. Aw. And how was your breastfeeding journey with your son?
It's been fine,
Mm-hmm.
like after I gave birth, like it took a moment to get him to latch,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that's pretty normal, and
Yeah.
he latched. And I think the first week of breastfeeding, like there were some days where um I had some pain, like my nipples were really sore.
Okay.
Um, Maybe like day 2 or 3 was like, oh, but
Mm-hmm.
that was it. And
Okay.
I can't say that I've really had issues breastfeeding. Like I've
Mm-hmm.
had plenty of milk for him.
Yeah.
He, was able to latch and,
Mm-hmm.
still breastfeeding. So
Yeah. Oh, I love that. No, that's so beautiful to hear because it can go, sometimes women in their first birth experience or first mothering experience, the breastfeeding journey can be a little bit difficult because it's, something that you've never done. But it's nice to hear that even though there was just a couple of days of pain, you were still able to, move past that and you still have a really healthy and beautiful breastfeeding relationship with your son now. So I love hearing that.
yeah, for sure. Like definitely some days of pain, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think like at that point after you've given birth, it's like like pain from breastfeeding is like so mediocre. Make a baby out of you. It's like, and like, in the recovery postpartum, like, after you give birth, like, yeah, it's really sore down there and like going to the bathroom and walking and like doing little things, it's
Mhm.
painful. At least it was for me. So
Mm.
like a little pain from breastfeeding was so insignificant to
Okay.
what, to birthing a human.
Yeah,
So
yeah, totally.
not a big deal.
Oh, wow. Well, your story is so beautiful and yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And like I said, I love hearing these stories of first-time mothers that are choosing to birth in this way because it's so impactful and it's so powerful to hear that, you didn't just birth in the hospital or birth at a birth center and have a very medicalized birthing experience because it was your first baby and you can't, as they say, choose or like birth your baby the first time in the hospital just so you know what it will be like or, have that practice run, quote unquote, just to make sure you can do it, which is like just a terrible narrative to tell a woman that you can't birth your first child at home free in your power in the way that you want to. So yeah, hearing that you did that and you were supported by the woman that you wanted and you had a connection with and you listened to your body and you listened to your baby and then you did it is just so amazing. It's so incredible that this is your story now and this is something that you get to share for any woman that's kind of like, oh, it's my first baby, like should I go to the birth center, I want to have a home birth. It's like, well, then have a home birth because you can do it
Yeah.
on the first time. So yeah, I'm really
You
grateful.
can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I also add like, I like have a plus size body, or that's what society has labeled my body. And
Mm-hmm.
before I found, the midwife that I have, when I was seeking out midwives and even obstetricians just to get like a checkup, right? I had
Mm-hmm.
just gotten back to the US. I just wanted a checkup.
Mm-hmm.
I was labeled high risk by everyone that I saw because of my weight. So
Wow.
they
Yeah.
actually were referring me to a high risk doctor for my
Wow.
birth. And having those labels on me and knowing what I know about birth in the US, like
Mm-hmm.
if I had given birth in a hospital with a high risk doctor, like I most likely would have had a C-section solely based on um my large body giving birth is just too dangerous.
Oh,
And no
absolutely.
doctor would want to take that risk. I'm also a Black woman. Like I knew all of this. That's like precisely why I didn't want to be in a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
In my labor, I was in labor for 3 days. Like no doctor would have
Yeah.
done that. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
too long. Like
Mm-hmm.
so I
Yeah.
say this to just add because like women in larger bodies are often told that we can't do it. There's too many risks,
Yeah.
right? And I also add that like when I was in the US and getting my blood pressure checked, it wasn't high, but it was like borderline high.
Mm-hmm.
When I came back to Costa Rica and started having my blood pressure checked in the comfort of my birth house, My blood pressure was fine.
Mm-hmm.
It was normal.
Yeah.
Throughout my labor, it was normal. It
Yeah.
was like, it was fine. It
Mm-hmm.
was elevated and high when I was in stressful doctor's offices.
Situation. Yeah, absolutely. And
So,
it's
yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that because being labeled high risk just because of your weight would have definitely been stacked against you. And if you had birth in the hospital, like you said, you most likely would have had your baby cut out of your body for no reason except for you're high risk and you're a woman of color, you're a Black woman. So that gives another label of quote unquote risk for your body. So, yeah, I mean, all of that is just complete bullshit. Like you said, you can birth your baby. Your body is fully capable, no matter what weight you are at. You're a healthy woman and, you can listen to yourself. So it's just like such a beautiful service that you've given to yourself and to your baby to say, like, fuck that. I'm not listening to this bullshit high risk label just because of my weight, which is super awful to just, pin on someone for no reason. So yeah, it's really great to also have you. I'm really grateful that you mentioned that because yeah, it's like just because a woman's weight is whatever it is, doesn't mean she's incapable of having a really beautiful birth experience. And she doesn't need to be labeled high risk for something so mediocre and something so stupid. So yeah, I'm really sorry that that was the, beginning experience of you in this pregnancy journey, but you totally were just like, nope, I'm not listening to that and
Well, and
did what you wanted to do.
it's because I had the education, like it's
Mm-hmm.
because I had the background that I had, and
Mm-hmm.
if I hadn't have had that information, I don't know that I would have been that way.
Right. Yeah.
I don't
True.
know that I would have felt empowered or had the knowledge to do a home birth at all. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's no way. I didn't know. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how would people know unless they have that?
Yeah.
Like, we just don't live in a world that paints that picture for women. So unless you have
Totally.
like a knowledge around home birth or natural
Mm-hmm.
birth, like, and I'm so
Mm-hmm.
grateful that I did because
Mm-hmm.
it only empowered me and got me to where I am now with
Exactly.
my beautiful little man.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. I'm just so happy to hear that of you and that you stepped in your power. And it's like I keep saying, just such a beautiful story and such a beautiful unfolding of what you did and how you had your baby. And you didn't let any of these stupid labels hold you back from doing exactly what you wanted to do. So I'm just so proud of you for that and so grateful that your story gets to be shared and other women will hear this and connect to it and then, say to themselves, well, Jenna can do it, so I obviously can do it as well. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for creating space for women to share. It's really important, and I'm so glad I got to share my story with you and
Yeah.
anyone who's listening.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. And one last question that I would love to ask you is if any woman would like to reach out to you, how can they do that? If they want to chat, ask you questions, go a little bit deeper maybe into your story, how can they contact you?
Yeah, they can. My Instagram is mindfully Jenna,
Mhm.
and my birth story is on my Instagram, and like the link in my bio has my website, my contact information. So Instagram's a good place to start, or just my website,
Mhm.
mindfullyjenna.com. You can go there too.
Perfect. Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you so much, Jenna. This has just been such a lovely conversation with you. Thank you so much, women, for listening to this latest episode of the Free Birthing in Color movement. If you want to continue supporting this movement and all that comes with it, please give a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Like the videos on YouTube and share this episode with some of your friends. As reciprocity for the work that I'm doing and the content that I'm creating, it only takes 2 minutes to show your support through a 5-star rating, a small written review, and a share. If you want to give a monetary donation to help with the back end costs of keeping everything that is happening within this movement going, you can send your donations through PayPal via the link in the show notes. And again, as reciprocity for the work that I'm doing and creating, I'm so grateful when those donations come through.
I have many other avenues of work that I've created, such as Portals of Wisdom, which are educational guidebooks for women to reclaim and remember their personal bodily sovereignty. I have one-to-one activation sessions and one-to-one or group mentorship opportunities, as well as an amazing course called Cyclical Woman that is a deep dive into the natural cycles of Mother Earth and connecting into your internal rhythms in relation to where Mother Earth is at any given moment. And lastly, I want to mention again the Free Birthing in Color community. It is open for enrollment, so please, if you want to create a deeper sense of connection to myself and other women navigating the same phase of life that you're in, please, please, please come and join us, and let's create something truly beautiful in there. All information can be found within the show notes below, or you can go to primalwomanportal.com and you'll find everything that you need. I'll see you in the next episode.